welcome back to Lex Reads. Okay, I got a little story. So I was looking at Goodreads and I wanted to see their definition and their list of black literature, right? Black classic literature, I would say. And girl, that list, which they had, I agree with them. It was classic literature, but it was the same literature that everyone knows about when it comes to black authors, writers, literature, etc. So y'all know I like books and everything that is not well known. Y'all know I classify them as unsung. And so I wanted to give you guys some recommendations that are classic literature. So we are going to play a game, okay? And it's going to be, instead of this book, you should read this book. All right, so let's just get started. Got my little whiteboard. This list was classified as classic literature on Goodreads. So the first one is Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Okay, we all know it, love it. Instead of Their Eyes Are Watching God, you should read Plum Bum by Jessie Redmond Fawcett. Y'all know I talk about her all the time. This is my favorite author during the Harlem Renaissance. She doesn't get the praise and recognition when it comes to that, time. Because when you do think of Harlem Renaissance, you think of Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, which clearly heavy hitters. But if it wasn't for Jessie Redmond Fawcett, we wouldn't know a Langston Hughes. She put a lot of the authors during that time on the map, like Anella Larson. Like I said, Langston Hughes. Who else? Rudolph Fisher. What's my boy's name? Wallace Thurman. So yeah, Jessie Redmond Fawcett. Okay, next is Things Fall Apart. Is it Chenoweth Achebe? I think I'm saying his name right, girl. So instead of reading that, you could read The Joys of Motherhood by Bucha Amajotoy. And this is about a woman that, Lord, she is just drowning in her life because she is a mother, she is a wife, and you guys know in, African culture, women are expected, especially during this time, are expected to just be wives and mothers. She realizes that being a mother is not all what it's cracked up to be. And you just literally see the woes of motherhood. You see the woes of her marriage and just her trying to navigate it. Okay, next is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Now, instead of reading that, you could read The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. This actually came out anonymously in 1912, I believe. Yeah, 1912. And then it got reissued in 1927 because the topic of this novel is about a young man that he goes away to school. You see how he navigates his personal and professional life. And yeah, there's a twist to it and you like, oh, okay. I love the play on this title. It has a little bit of elements, a tiny elements of Invisible Man. So yes. Okay, next is I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Great, one of my favorites. But instead of reading that, you could read Shirley Chisholm, The Good Fight. Now, this came out in the 70s, I believe 1973, and she was just elected in 1972 as the first Black woman elected to Congress. Then her announcing her candidacy for running for president. And she talks about obviously her life growing up and just her schooling, and then you get into her professional life, going into politics, you get a personal life when she gets married and things like that. And this edition came out in last year, and I love it because the blurb, it has Vice President Kamala Harris, giving a shout out of the book. It's just like, you know what I mean? When you think about it, like, she's a vice president, she's a woman, and she's Black. So I love that. But this was very, very good. Again, if you are looking for that like autobiography, this is perfect. Okay, next they had Native Son by Richard Wright, which, Lord, that is a lot. I've talked about his writing, where fantastic writer, but he can kind of be a little bit boring because he does, he explains every little detail, where sometimes it's like Can you kind of get to the point a little bit? But he was a brilliant writer. You know, you can't take that away from him. But instead of reading that, I would say Ernest J. Gaines' The Tragedy of Buddy Sims. Now, this actually came out in 2017, and it's about a young man named Buddy Sims that has just gotten convicted for robbery and murder, I believe. And you have a journalist, a reporter that goes back to Louisiana to get just some facts about his life and how he ended up the way he ended up. And there is a twist to this book. Also, this book is very short, so I could really appreciate that. It's like 120 some pages, because with Ernest J. Gaines, just like, you know, Richard Wright, they talk about the injustice of Black man, and oh Lord, it can be very tough. The good thing about those writers, they're such good storytellers and such great writers that you get in the mindset of a Black man where sometimes you feel like you are a Black man. And it's deep. Okay, next is The Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison. Of course, they gonna mention that. I did like that. It's a tough read. I did read it when I was about 19 or 20 years old, so it's been a while. But that's a book where once you read it, you don't need to read it again. So those kind of same themes, I would say, instead of reading that, you could read Eva's Man by Gail Jones. Now, actually, Toni Morrison put Gail Jones on the map because when Toni worked at Random House, she was obviously an editor, and she published and edited Gail Jones' work. So if you do like Toni Morrison, you probably would like Gail Jones. Now, Gail Jones is not for the weak. Her books are traumatizing. They talk about, you know, sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. I mean, girl, the stuff that Eva does, and when you realize what she did, is like, Lord, she's telling her story, and this woman has been through tragedy. She's been sexually abused, verbally abused, mental, you know, abuse, everything that's abused physically, she's done that. And girl, like I said, it's deep. Now, the good thing is, this is only 177 pages. Oh, thank you, Jesus, because if this is about 300 to 400 pages, I think I would have DNF'd it, because it was a lot. But she gives you the mindset of a Toni Morrison book. Next, they had Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. And then they also had another book by James Baldwin, which is Giovanni's Room. Fantastic, love those. So I couldn't find a instead of, so we're still going to stick to James Baldwin, but instead of those books that he is known for, I would say you could read Just Above My Head. This is his last fictional book that he wrote. Now with this book, it talks about the church. You have a pastor that, girl, he is just abusive to his wife, his children, and everything. So it's kind of like a hypocrite, because you're talking about, you know, saving souls, but your home life is toe up. The one thing about this book, I would say, he has so many characters, so many, that it can kind of get confusing. But how you get through it is you got to write the characters down and write a little synopsis or something that you can get through it. That's how I had to get through it. And you know, with James Baldwin's works, he's going to talk about, obviously, homosexuality. He talks about religion a lot. He talks about the Black church, the Black experience, everything that's Black experience and culture, you go find in the James Baldwin book. I love, personally, his fiction better than his nonfiction. And for me, it's because I'm not a nonfiction person. But I think a lot of people, when they do say James Baldwin's name, you think about his nonfiction and critical essays and analysis and stuff like that, which is great. But his fiction is off the chain. I would also say another James Baldwin that you could read is Going to Meet the Man. And these are short stories. And I would say I really love, is it the last short story? I think it is Going to Meet the Man, because his protagonist is a woman, and a lot of his books, the protagonist is a man. And so it was like, just to see him write from a woman's perspective, it was really, really good. And he could write that. If you are looking for some short stories, or if you are a fan of short stories, I would say pick this up. And then another book, lastly, of his that no one really talks about is Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone. Now, this is not my favorite, but I notice a lot of people don't mention this because he blasphemed a little bit too much for me with this. But you have a man, Lou. Lou is a, what is he? He's an actor, and he does like stage work in theater, and he passes out when he is working, you know, when he's performing, and he goes obviously to the hospital, and he goes through, was, you know, in the hospital, he goes through his whole life basically, and you know, you read about it, and he is bisexual, so you get, you know, his perspective, so you get his relationship with a woman and a man, and just everything. I mean, yeah. Only thing, like I said, he blasphemed a little bit too much for me, but it was a good story. Okay, so we're done with James. Next, they have Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison again. I couldn't find anything equivalent to that because that's a heavy hitter book. And if I'm being honest with you, Song of Solomon was not my favorite. It actually kind of was confusing to me. So I said, I'm gonna skip that, okay? Because I don't know what I could read instead of that. Okay, so next is A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. Y'all know every time they do a black play, they gotta mention that, which is great. I like that play. Oh boy, did with that money, just, Lord, I could have just beat Walter. But let's move on. So instead of reading that, you could read The Color Museum by George C. Wolfe. And this, fantastic. So you have, instead of acts, they're called exhibits. And there's about, I want to say eight exhibits? And it talks about the stereotypes of blackness. Okay, you know, you talk about the mammy character, you talk about, you know, sexuality, you talk about dating, I mean everything. And you actually can watch this play on YouTube. And what I did is I watched it and read it at the same time, and it was fantastic. You actually have the actress Loretta Devine. She's in one of the exhibits, which is the hair piece, and I love it. She's contemplating about what hair this woman is dating her boyfriend, and she thinks that she should get like rid of him, and she's contemplating what hair she should wear. And it's hilarious. I will put the whole, if it's still on YouTube, I'll put the whole thing down. I urge you guys to watch it. I think it's like, I want to say like 30 minutes or something like that, 30-40 minutes. Fantastic. Okay, and then the last is Narrative of a Life of Frederick Douglass. Of course, they got to do Frederick Douglass, which, girl, I have realized with researching, Frederick Douglass was extremely famous. Okay, really, really famous. Like, during, you know, his time, girl. So it's hard to kind of, you know, compare it to anyone. I mean, you can't compare him. He is uncomparable. But I would say, if you want to read a different narrative, a different slavery narrative, I would say you should read The Life of Josiah Henson. Now, Josiah Henson, he was inspiration behind Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, right? Read that last year. Actually really did enjoy it. There are some stereotypes, obviously, but with him, he was beyond a pioneer. You know, you do think of Uncle Tom, it's a negative stereotype, negative statement, but he was far from an Uncle Tom. This man walked all the way from the South to Canada with his children. He opened the first manual, I think, labor school for slaves. I mean, just a pioneer in his right. And the fact that that man sacrificed his life for his children, and also to be an inspiration for someone to write a book about you, that's, I mean, kudos in itself. This man, I would urge you guys to read about him because he is like I said, this man is a pioneer. Power of television. Learned about him through the Jeffersons. So yeah, guys, that is it when it comes to my version of classic literature. Because, I mean, no shade to Goodreads. I like Goodreads. I actually use Goodreads to document you know, the books that I do read. And also for some of the what do you call it? Reviews. I like to look at the stars to see how people, you know, star rate the books. But that's all I use it. I don't really take them lists seriously, if I'm being honest with you, especially when it comes to Black literature, because if you notice, they repeated the same authors. Um they had James Baldwin. They had two books of James Baldwin. They had what, two books of what's her name, Toni Morrison. And then also too, it's the same authors. We know Toni, we know Maya, you know, we know Ruff Ellison. You know, we know Frederick Douglass. Let's get some more. Okay, let's get some more blacks up in there. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'll be back with more Black books. Bye.